We have 6 papers, one after another. The comments, suggestions, queries will be entertained only after the completion of paper, all papers. Please note the presenter's name, note your comments, your queries in your notebooks, and we'll give you time at the end, only after all 6 presentations are over. And we are trying something new. Here in this presentation, I'm going to chair the session as well as I'm going to commence the presentation. I have a paper too, so I'll try to make it very short, presentation by myself, and then we'll proceed with presentations. Let me check the presenters. Dronalal Puriji, are you here? Yes. Balram Chapagai, yes. Bharat Singh Thapa, he has reported he has another session down there, first presenter, then after he will be joining us. Arun Paudel, Arunji, Arun Paudel, not reported. Satish Kumar Ojha, Professor Saab, and it's a team presentation, Rupeshji. So this is the sequence. Can we commence my presentation, first presentation, please? First file. Yes. Development scenarios leading unto prosperity in Nepal. It's not fully displayed in the board. Sorry for inconvenience. Ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed, can I request you to be seated, all of you, so that we'll feel at comfort. So, following a number of developments undergoing in the country more recently, I've been working since almost 2 years on a paper. We hear different politicians, different governors, and senior bureaucrats in different ministries talking about prosperity. And as a university professor, for me, it becomes a quest of inquiry. Since we are talking about heading onto prosperity, how far have we been prepared? How is the overall macro national environment heading onto prosperity? By this notion, my presentation has been guided. It's a long paper. Full paper has been already submitted, almost 36 pages. By shortening it, presentation would be 5 to 7 minutes. I won't take much time. I understand the value and urgency of keeping time today. So basically, there are 2 things in my paper: analysis of development scenarios in the country and strategic implications. After going through a number of reviews published in different papers, attending different series of workshops, seminars, talk programs, also running a number of roundtable discussions, one-to-one peer and in-depth interviews, I could figure out that as of now, Nepal has already achieved long-awaited political stability by transforming the national structural system into a set of 3-tier governance system. That is what we have achieved in almost last 20 years. And policy stability is in its making. All its symptoms are encouraging, but that may not be enough. And strategic thinking, where we are sticking today. For enacting a system-based approach for national development, heading onto prosperity, nation is yet to be guided by strategic thinking in respect with game changer initiatives, both at governance as well as execution level. Similarly, ethical compliance, Ali also, our friend from Lincoln University, he was talking about control of corruption, control of unethical abuses. In Nepal too, situation is similar. Red tapeism, corruption, and most importantly, systematic delay. We have a system that allows us to take benefit of delaying the things. That is what one of the impeding challenges in respect with ethical compliances in the country, and at the same time, developing system capacity. System capacity of the governments, system capacity of different agencies, and rest of actors. Both from the perspectives of institutional system capacity as well as human capacity. And my paper is more confined on developing human capacity, management development capacity. For this, I have proposed a framework. Precisely speaking, it is a recommendation to the government, federal government of Nepal, that there should be a provision of having in place National Policy Advisory Council, NPAC, I label it as, with these 4 predominant duties to be performed by the proposed NPAC to enact a system-driven approach right from bottom to top, federal state to provincial state to local governments. National Strategic Decision Advisory Performance Appraisal, whatever strategic decisions are made, who is to implement, within what time frame, with what results, with what consequences, outcomes and impacts, those things are to be made a systemic part of assessment. That is how these 4 functional domains should be determined for this proposed entity. And similarly, next proposition I have suggested is National Plan of Action on HRD and Management Development System. As I already told, my major focus is on developing human resources to undertake the goals. The goals, I mean both goals of SDG and rest of development initiatives. And this framework should consider again 4 assigned duties, like sectorial jobs and management development analysis. We don't know how much jobs are required in Nepal. What is the total workforce required for this country in different sectors? We have transportation, we have communication, we have hospitality, we may have manufacturing, various sectors. Which sector requires how much of workforce over the time period? We don't have those systems readily available within our government machinery. So this framework should consider these 4 assigned duties. And next suggestion, time and again we all are talking about prosperity, welfare state, and our constitution also directs us stating moving on to welfare state, and government also agrees. Anomaly, we don't have roadmap how to reach there. We don't have defined parameters, thresholds we have to define. And my assessment, having several reviews, based on those reviews, I could figure out somewhat these 10 evidential things should be in place if we were to move onto welfare state mechanism. And the pathways, how to reach there. First and foremost, predominant requirement is peaceful political stability, which we say we have somehow achieved. Now, these rest of 4 steps we have to follow. Attainment and continuity with policy stability. Overnight, we are changing policies overnight, and we are talking about stable welfare state economic propositions. Here we have to be pinpointed and confined. Again, the job may go to federal state government. Government has to recognize the need of having its own proposition on how to get there. Where to go is already agreed. How to get there? These staircase steps should be considered as the pathways to reach to the attainment of national prosperity. And again, it cannot be a fixed up proposition. We have to keep it a dynamic system process in place. And finally, we have a number of professional societies in this country, initiated by the civil society as well as government. Like we have Nepal Medical Council, we have Nepal Engineering Council, we have Nepal Nursing Council, we have various research and development institutions funded, initiated by the government as well as private sector and also development sector. And those actors also should be given with these roles if we are to move ahead with conformity of attainment of prosperity. To conclude, I'll use only one statement out of this. Much awaited political stability is already achieved. Now, the road towards policy stability with effective execution should be the national mission if we are to move onto this direction parallelly from both local as well as provincial and federal government, and also from civil society organizations. With this, as I already told, you can note your questions, queries, comments, and I'll be taking those questions at the end when the rest of 5 presentations are over. Now, may I now request other presenters. Next presenter is Dronalal Puri. Dronalal Puri ji, are you ready? Please, Puri ji, you may take the stage here.
Can you please take out my, okay. First of all, thank you, Professor, for giving me opportunity to speak in front of my dear friends, colleagues. I am D.L. Puri, Dronalal Puri, full name is, and I recently completed my PhD in Good Governance in Cooperative of Nepal from Shinawatra University, Thailand. And I am the first person of Nepal to research, to do PhD in this topic so far. During my PhD, of my 5 years journey of my PhD, during my 5 years, I spent about 1 year in the field. 1 year I spent during coursework, and the conclusion, whatever it is long, but in gist, I have very short period of time, so only the gist I have brought here to show you. Actually, it's my opportunity to show you, share with you. Okay, the topic of my presentation is Good Governance for Performance of Nepalese Cooperatives, Study of Saving and Credit Cooperatives in Kathmandu districts. It is already mentioned, and it is in the thesis dissertations style in chapter 5. And this is in short, it is all about cooperative. In a single sentence, actually, cooperative is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to fulfill their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. Actually, that is the cooperatives, and it's mentioned over there. The basic value and norms of cooperatives. Cooperatives actually is guided by 10 values and norms, 6 basic values and 4 ethical values: self-help, self-accountable, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity are the 6 basic values, and honesty, openness, social responsibility, caring for others are ethical values, and the 7 principles of cooperatives are governed by these values and norms. These 7 principles are voluntary and open memberships, democratic member control, economic participations of member, autonomy and independence, education, training and informations, cooperation among the cooperatives, concern for community. Actually, these are the 7 principles of cooperatives designed by ICA, International Cooperative Alliance, in 1995. And all over the world, all the cooperatives are guided by those 7 principles. Even still in Nepal, there are 7 types of cooperatives. There are 16 types of cooperatives. All types of cooperatives are governed by these 7 principles. Well, it is all about governance. Actually, good governance, in a simple way, good governance means good management, in a simple way. And good governance means it's a way of decision-making process. And good governance is actually, good governance is the controlling, it is the handling, controlling, directing mechanism, and finally making the right decision in the right time in the right place. The same thing is mentioned over here. And according to my topics, the performance can be divided into 2 parts: financial performance and the non-financial performance. And my concern is towards financial performance. And financial performance also can be categorized like this in many parts. My final focus of financial performance is ROA, means return on asset, means NPAT, net profit after tax divided by total assets. Performance means specific, meaning in my context is this. While this is the international model of cooperatives, and this is the national model of cooperative, which is developed by me, which is legitimacy, participation, professionalization, accountability, and transparency are the pillar of good governance. Well, this is the contribution made by cooperative in the world. In Kenya, Kenya has contributed 45% contribution in GDP by the cooperatives. Cooperative has contributed in GDP 20% in New Zealand, in France 18%, and so on. But in Nepal, no study so far. Therefore, I have not mentioned here. Leaders, political leaders used to speak, they say it is 3%, 4%, 5%, but no supporting evidence so far. So my next postdoctorate will be on this topic. What is the actual contribution of cooperative in GDP will be my next postdoctorate topic. So it is lack of research so far in this country. So my focus was, in the beginning I did in 7 provinces, but finally I focused only in Kathmandu districts. And it is mentioned over there. Actually, this data is, during my period, it was 2017, total number of cooperatives 34,512, but nowadays around 35,000. And highest portion occupied is by savings and credit cooperative, 39%, and agriculture cooperative, 32%, multipurpose, 13 and others 16. These are the statement of the problem. Because of lack of time, I'm not explaining in detail. These are my research questions. Literature review, I did like this. And these are the past researches. Well, these are the factors affecting, list of the factors affecting good governance. Actually, there were 21, but only 10 I picked up over here. And according to the opinion leaders, for Nepalese context, I designed only 5. And that is my conceptual framework. And these are my hypotheses. Altogether 6 hypotheses and sub-hypotheses. Research methodology, actually this method, research method, I followed a mixed method. Means both quantitative and qualitative. And quantitative, according to Creswell 2011, I followed this explanatory sequential design. And the quantitative data collections and analysis, I followed up it with the qualitative data collections and interpretation. And this design is recommended by Creswell and Craig 2011. And altogether 353 sample I designed, selected 353 samples, but I did like this. Total number of population in my research population is 2,997. That means total number of saving and credit cooperatives in Kathmandu district is 2,997. And out of those, I selected 353, but I did pilot tested 50, and incomplete number 7, and no response 20, and net sample was 353. And this is accompanied by, this number is accompanied by M&A's formula. I think next, this. Actually, M&A is the professor of statistician of Japan, Japanese professor. According to him, we can find out sample by this formula, n divided by 1 plus n e square, and it comes 353, which correspond with my sample size in previous slide. And in qualitative approach, only 10 sample I followed to the quantitative, and these are the steps I followed while doing my research. And this is my model of my performance of good governance. And this is the Cronbach alpha, altogether overall 90%. And this is the finding and discussions. And perception tables I prepared like this. And perception table for participations, professionalizations, accountability, transparency, and then finally this is the regression. In regression, my F statistics is 102 point somethings. Means from there it is clear that participation, there is significant relationships. The participation is significant with the since the p-value is 0.00, it's significant at 1%. So the participation, there is significant relationships between participations and performance of cooperatives according to this. And that double asterisk means significant at 1%. My level of confidence is 5%. So 3 variables are significant and 2 are insignificant with the dependent variable. And these are the hypotheses. 3 are accepted and the 2 are rejected. And analysis and finding is like this. And okay, this is the conclusion model. After all, actually it is my contribution to Nepalese community. And so I will take a few minutes, even if it is more time. Okay, good governance. Actually, good governance equals to L plus PP plus AT plus H. Albert Einstein E is equal to mc square formula. He made atom bomb by using that formula. E is equal to mc square. Similarly, my formula for good governance is good governance GG equals to L plus PP plus AT multiplied by H. And that is the combination of legitimacy plus participations plus professional license plus accountability and transparency multiplied by honesty equals to good governance. And good governance always leads to the good performance. Good governance leads to the good performance, and good performance can make the cooperative access. Access means A1 competitive choice for excellence in service and soundness. Means good performance, good governance always leads the good performance, and good performance guarantee the access. And access can increase the trust or confidence or reliability, which is the main lacking of Nepal. There is a lack of trust in cooperative in Nepal. So how can we boost the trust? By this access, we can boost the trust. So that helps to enhance that helps to increase the trust in cooperatives, and that helps to promote the sustainable and equitable socio-economic development and growth, and that helps to that helps to increase their self-satisfactions, that helps to increase their prosperity, and then that helps to increase the quality of life and the life expectancy rate, and helps to increase human development index finally. And finally, good governance can make the better world, can make the better nation and better world by applying this model. And conclusion is, good governance significantly associate with the performance of cooperative in Nepal, and my conclusions correspond with the conclusion of R. Dayanandan 2013 of Ethiopia. He researched cooperative in Ethiopia and found the same result, but only one difference is there. That difference I have mentioned here, but 4 variables agrees with his research. The same thing is mentioned here, and the contribution is first contribution. The study confirms the empirical study of Dayanandan, which I already mentioned. Finished. Okay. Okay.
Balramji, please proceed. It will be a rapid fire because we have already gone beyond scheduled time. Presenters will make presentation and take the seat on the dais.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Session chair and all of you. Today I'm going to make a brief presentation on my paper, Does Corporate Social Responsibility Pay Off? Verification of North American postulation in the least developed country context of Nepal. Now let me show you a overall structure of my presentation. This is the overall structure of my presentation. We talk a lot about corporate social responsibility, but without profit, various responsibilities of business become moot considerations. Thus, whether CSR pays off has become an important question for both business and society. Though theoretical perspectives developed particularly in the North American context argue that there is generally a positive relationship between the two, it is not yet tested in distinct socioeconomic and political context of Nepal. So against this backdrop, there are 3 specific objectives of this study: to examine the relationship between CSR practices and its performance vis-a-vis perceptual measure of financial performance. Another is CSR practices and ROA, that is accounting-based measure of performance. And finally, another objective is concerned with, again, the relationship between CSR and financial performance, but it is market-based measure of financial performance, that is market-to-book ratio. Review of literature have shown conflicting results. Some have shown positive relationship, some have shown negative relationship, some have shown no relationship, and some have even shown curved linear relationship. Means if social responsibility is low, then performance can also be low. When it is moderate, performance can go up, and when again it is too high, performance can again go down. Some researchers have shown that result. These are some of the summary of selected empirical studies on CSR and FP relationship. And as you see in this table, some have shown positive, some have shown negative, some have shown mixed results, and some have shown even conditional positive relationship. And different studies have used different measures of CSR and different measures of financial performance. So this is the overview of major theoretical studies reviewed in this major papers reviewed in this study. And as you see in this figure, this is the conceptual framework. In the first block, you see the various aspects of CSR practices. And in the second block, you see the various aspects of financial performance, and firm size and firm age are control variables which may confound the relationship between CSR and financial performance. And there is a positive relationship between CSR practices and various measures of financial performance are my hypothesis. It is a survey research conducted in the context of listed companies of Nepal. And at that time, when I conducted the study, there were 201 firms in NEPSE representing different industry sectors. And of them, I took 68 firms as sample. The unit of analysis is individual firm. And I used structured questionnaire method for collecting primary data and published annual report for collecting financial performance relevant data. And in order to test the normality of various constructs, SW test was conducted, and then in order to analyze, further analyze the data, correlation and hierarchical multiple regression analysis were used. And in order to ensure robustness of the study, some measures were taken. Some of them were, questionnaire were anonymous. They were finalized only after pre-testing. Sample size was adequate, as suggested by the expert in the field for conducting regression analysis. Various assumptions for performing this analysis were tested and met, and the values of chronoburst alpha for all constructs were within the range of 0.7 to 9. Nunelli has asserted that if the alpha value is 0.7 or above, it is good enough, and if it is above 0.9, it may indicate redundant items. So it is neither, it is internal consistency, reliability of data was good enough, and then no constructs were redundant. This is the correlation among studied variables. As you see in this table, all financial performance On that basis, we may conclude that if we look at this correlation table, CSR practices better explain future performance of companies rather than past performance, because accounting-based measure of financial performance reflects past financial performance. It is based on historical data, whereas market to book ratio is mainly hinges on future prospect of companies, not only past performance. So it has different implication. Likewise, this is the table, output table. The different tables were consolidated into one in order to show the results of hierarchical multiple regression analysis for different measures of CSR. If you look at this again, there is positive relationship between positive relationship between CSR practices and different measures of financial performance, but the contributing variables to the positive relationship between CSR practices and financial performance vis-a-vis perceptual measure, accounting-based measure, and market-based measure are different. For example, if you see CSR practices and financial performance, perceptual measure of financial performance, CSR towards employees and CSR towards shareholders and investors are the variables which have significantly contributed to the positive relationship between dependent and independent variables. For ROA, significant variables are different. They are again shareholders and investors, and then CSR towards environment. But if we look about market to book ratio, then firm size and CSR towards employees are important variables contributing to the positive relationship between these two. So this is the summary of hypothesis. And as you see in this table, all hypotheses are accepted with different sets of significant variables. Because of time constraint, let me talk about what is relatively more important of this conclusion of this study. Here, based on the above findings and discussions, this study largely supports the postulation made in North American context, because in North America, different scholars have developed different theories. For example, Edward Freeman in 1984 developed a stakeholder theory which argues that being responsible to different stakeholders is not only morally right thing to do, but also it pays off to business. Strategically, it is good to business, and at the same time, it is morally right thing to do. Therefore, this finding also substantiates the postulation made in North American context. Not only Edward Freeman, but also Michael E. Porter and other scholars have argued in the same line, and this research substantiates their arguments, and postulation made in the North American context has been verified in distinct socioeconomic and political context of Nepal. Here, it is noteworthy to mention that though all models are significant, CSR practices, as indicated by the Irish square, CSR practices better explain the variation in market-based measure of financial performance than accounting-based measure of financial performance. As I already talked about, these are some of the significant variables contributing to positive relationship. And however, CSR towards, interestingly, CSR towards customers, CSR toward community, and CSR with respect to corporate governance, though they have positive relationship with financial performance, they do not significantly contribute to the positive relationship. With this, thank you so much. I'll be happy to listen to your questions at the end of our session. Thank you so much.
Okay, good afternoon. This is my review paper. It's not empirical paper. So probably you'll not find any data here. So the topic that I'm going to talk about here is the paradigm shift in microfinance system, where I have reviewed some papers and then I would put forward some agenda for the future research. Basically, this is the paper that motivated me to write this paper, where many changes in the theory and practice of the microfinance have been observed since last 4 decades of the modern history of microfinance. So these are the key research issues that I'm going to address in my paper through the literature survey. They are how microfinance have been evolved over the period of time. Is there any fundamental change that have been observed in the microfinance system, and caused by these changes in future, what could be the possible agenda, possible research issues for academicians as well as for the policymakers for making good policies. As I mentioned, it's a review paper, so the source is only the books and articles published in online portals, including these all journal portals. And it will be talking about like the extensive discussion on how the new paradigm has been emerged in the microfinance, and then what could be what that is instigating basically for the researcher for carrying out the research in the future. And these are the 5 squared of the fundamental paradigm shift parameters that will be explaining the paradigm shift in the microfinance. So starting with the first one, the concept have been evolved since 1976, when Professor Yunus started microfinance by giving a small loan to the poor women in Bangladesh. That time it was called the microcredit. Then after additional feature of the financial services, they were added, called the microcredit plus. Then after in 2010, it was called the microfinance, including the financial and non-financial intervention. And this is the era of financial inclusion, where it's not only for the poverty alleviation, but also for access to quality financial products. That is the agenda for today's microfinance. So this is how the concept has been evolved over the period of time. The second, this pillar, or you can say the building block of this microfinance system, is about the purpose of microfinance. Purpose of microfinance originally is to alleviate the poverty through entrepreneurship development, but which is explained by theory of change. However, recently there are many studies that have been conducted on the purpose of microfinance, whether it is entrepreneurial finance or it is something else. So most of these studies, they have found that microfinance is not going to make the transformational, the impact transformational change in the life of the household. Rather, it is going to just give more choices, financial choices to the customer. So because of that, it is called the household financing, and what I have observed over the period of time, and based on my research as well, which is not mentioned here, but based on my research and observation, microfinance does not address the poverty alleviation in sustainable way. Rather, it addresses the seasonal poverty. So the previous literature, they also support like the liquidity provision and the financial choice, that these all are supported by the new purpose of the microfinance. And third part of the, which is also supported by these 2 books. They are outcome of the year-long research of poor household, how they they do their finance and how they make their life. And another important concept that is very important to discuss about the paradigm shift in the microfinance system is microfinance business model. This was initially taken as a not-for-profit business and conducted by NGOs and not-for-profit organizations, non-banking financial institutions. However, right now, even Muhammad Yunus, who started this and with the concept of the not-for-profit and as a social business, he also has supported the concept of, commercialization of microfinance. So where microfinance, they focus more to the profitability, they are more become a bank rather than the development agent. That's the another emerging area, the emerging concepts in the microfinance. So the consequence is that because of that, we can see their focus is somewhere else, which we call the mission drift in microfinance, where their focus is not women, their focus is not poorest segment of the clients, which we can easily see here since 2010. The focus has been shifted from poorest segment of the client to less poor segment of the client. So that's the consequence of the commercialization of microfinance. And another fourth important aspect of the microfinance system that explains the paradigm shift is the lending model. The crux of microfinance, the basic idea of the microfinance and its core value initially was the group lending. However, recently, since 2010, it has been changing, and it's not the group lending, individual lending is preferred over the group lending by many microfinance institutions, which is called, like Carlin and Ginman call it, the second movement in the microfinance, second generation movement in the microfinance. And major microfinance institutions, they follow the similar model. And the reason behind this is from both from microfinance institutions or service providers, as well as the clients also prefer the individual lending over the group lending. But consequence of this new practice that followed by microfinance institution is that they are more profit oriented, they are more sustainable. At the same time, the outreach measure of these MFIs is very, very poor. But the repayment rate has been unaffected by this, this new practice. So these could be the possible issue where we can carry out some research on it. And the last one is the impact evaluation technique, which is fundamentally changed in microfinance system, because if you look at the microfinance impact evaluation before 2005, there were only the traditional or conventional type of the technique called the non-experimental or quasi-experimental or something like parametric type of the technique. They were used to evaluate the impact, because the impact evaluation is one of the most important aspects of the microfinance system. However, a randomized control trial, it was introduced in 2005, and first study they were published in 2009. And after that, if you look at the scenario, that has been totally changed, because most of the the development economists, they prefer RCT, and they are calling the RCT as a best measuring impact assessment technique. And leading economic journals, they prefer RCT and for publishing article, and major development policy institutions, they also advocate for this RCT, for example, JPOL, IPA, and 3IE. And if you look at the popularity of the RCT in microfinance impact evaluation, recently 3 economists, one from Harvard and 2 from MIT, they were awarded with the Nobel Prize for their contribution in developing RCT for impact evaluation in the development intervention, basically microfinance, health, and education. So what one of the scholars, Esther Duflo, pointed out that in 2000, there were no RCT articles in top journals. And in 2015, if you look at 32 top economics, development economics journal, then out of 32, 10 articles that you can find in the RCT. So I'm trying to say here is that there is a fundamental shift in the impact evaluation technique as well. That is a part of the microfinance system. So what I can conclude from here is there's a fundamental change in the microfinance system. That change is explained by financial inclusion, household finance, then commercialization of the microfinance with minimum subsidy, focusing to the less poor segment, then the changing towards the individual liability or individual lending rather than group lending, and popularity of the randomized control trial method in impact evaluation. So what could be the possible agenda for future research? Based on that, I have listed out few possible agenda for future research, and probably these could be many. For example, first one could be maybe related to the financial inclusion, and its depth and breadth. Then second agenda that I have listed here is my mission drift, and because of the individual lending and its outcome. Similarly, commercialization, does it leads to the sustainability outreach and impact? And another agenda could be, should subsidy continue for MFI? How it is going to affect the performance of MFI in terms of economic performance and the social performance? And is microfinance household and entrepreneurial finance, microfinance household microfinance, or is it entrepreneurial finance? So what kind of the philosophy that is guiding the microfinance? Is it household or entrepreneur? And similarly, does it solve the problem of seasonal poverty? And finally, it's a starting off using the randomized control trial. So there are many drawbacks, many limitations of the randomized control trial. So still there are many criticism, for example, ethical issues, and even the selection bias is controlled by this, but there are many other other validity, like external validity of RCT, which is still is questionable. So again, use of the RCT in low-income country, basically developing country, is very, very less. Basically, I'm talking about in Nepal, and it's huge in RCT. How it is going to affect the good policy making. It is going to contribute in the good policy making in Nepalese context. So that could be the possible. These could be the possible research issue for further research. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arun Podel, and I'm here to talk to you about our research. Our research is looking at identifying strategies that business corporations are using in our country to cope against the implications of brain drain. So brain drain is one of the escalating phenomenon that Nepal is experiencing right now, and we took this with some interest. Now, before we get into the topic of brain drain in Nepal, I wanted to briefly tell you how we got into it, and also mention that our research is actually still going on. We're actually still in the initial phase of our research. We have not completed it, but even so, we want to take some time to discuss the idea. Before I actually, a while back, I was working as a corporate manager in one of the leading aviation firms, and as part of that, I undertook some significant recruitment responsibilities. And while I was working in this company, I found out that companies are not so much scared of not finding the right talent, but they were more scared of finding the right talent and then that guy just leaving the company. In other words, companies were forced to hire people that were just average, that they knew would stay in the company for a longer time than actually hire a candidate who was much more competent that they did not think could stay in the country. And unfortunately, I too had to adopt this strategy because I did not want to spend all the cost in recruitment for hiring somebody and then after 1 year end up having him gone. The fact was, the trend we are seeing here is there are a lot of competent people who want to work in various industries, but just when the company is ready to sort of reap the benefits out of training and all that, let's say 1 year down the line, they leave the company. And this is a phenomenally dangerous practice for the companies. In terms of strategic human resource management, you have to think, if you're investing 2 years to train your candidate in the hope that you can use him after 2 years, and just when you are ready to mobilize the employee, he goes abroad, it's a terrible phenomena. So that was something that struck me deeply. And also I started to think, well, how is it that big corporations, like for example banks, how do they manage and deal with such phenomena? What are they doing exactly to make sure 5 years down the line that they're not running out of competent people? So that's when me and Devra sir, we started this research. Unfortunately, it's still ongoing and actually quite in the initial stage. But I'd like to very quickly discuss some of the aspects we're going to look at in this phase. So when we talk about brain drain, there is a lot of there is no sort of agreement in the definition of brain drain. We have all kinds of agencies, from United Nations to International Labour Organization to International Organization for Migration to World Economic Forum. They all have different definitions of brain drain, but one of the things that they seem to agree on is for brain drain to occur, a person with certain skills and or certain educational qualifications has to leave the country, his or her country called home country, and emigrate to a foreign country called host country in search of better opportunities. That is one of the common things that we will see in the definition. Oh, faster, okay. And brain drain is actually a global phenomenon. If we look at the statistics, it's the process of brain drain is escalating rapidly. We combine statistics from different sources to find out that in 1970, the total global migration, the total estimated world migrant stock was in 1960 was 76 million. In 2005, that came up to 200 million. In 2010, that came up to 210 million. And as of 2017, we have a total global migration stock of 258 million, which is a very phenomenal rate. And out of that, although we don't have specific statistics to suggest how much of those were skilled people, we can argue that a substantial percentage of that could be skilled. And if we have to put that in the context of Nepal, between 1996 and 2006, in the decade-long insurgency we had in this country, World Bank estimated that about 4 million people migrated to Gulf countries, and out of those 4 million, it is estimated that 25%, or in other words, 1 million people were actually highly skilled people. If you look at the statistics from last year, according to the Ministry of Education, 65,000 students applied or filed to continue their higher education abroad. So this kind of numbers, they are phenomenally striking to a small country like us. And so not only is brain drain a global phenomena, but it should be something that should be of deep interest to academics and to practitioners in our country. So if we look at the figure here, I'm trying to be sorry, it seems like the font has been changed, so you cannot see a lot there. So if you look at these statistics, they're really significantly alarming. So we wanted to conduct this research. Now, some of the top destinations that Nepalese students seem to choose is India, Cyprus, Canada, and the United States and Australia. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. So that led us to the question of what are some of the important enablers of brain drain. In other words, what are the factors that has allowed for such significant rise in brain drain. And one of the most cited reasons in the literature is actually globalization, the fact that people are free to travel wherever they want if they have the necessary talent and skills, was cited as one of the most important enablers of brain drain. The second one was developed countries now gradually starting to look for talented people to fill their societies, technically called high quality-oriented immigration programs. So countries like, for example, United Kingdom back in the days starting HSMP, called highly skilled manpower. The United States now desperately looking for people who have good experience in STEM categories. Canada and Australia currently actively pursuing people with, with good language, good education, and good experience. If you have these three things, countries, developed countries, are actually willing to call you into their countries, and that is one of the facilitators of global brain drain. And if you look at the statistics, according to OECD, 37% of the global migration happens from developing or least developed countries to one of the OECD countries. And that is not surprising because everybody wants to have a better life. So globalization, one of them. The next one is that. And the final one is the staggering rate of unemployment in this country. According to the government's data, the current unemployment rate of Nepal is 11.4%. Now, when you combine that with the labor underutilization rate, which stands at almost 40%, it is not very difficult to understand why students and people with talent are actually flying off in such alarming rates. Okay, 11.4% there. Some of the other factors that were cited in the literature were things like peer pressure, family ties, the aspiration for a good life, but also in many instances, developed countries like Japan looking to fill their population with young people because they have a severe demographic condition where old people are getting older and young people don't want to have kids. That allows for some of us to migrate. We're going to skip this part because we're running out of time. So when we quickly scan the literature, there are various types of interest in the literature. Some of them are looking at the details of the nature of brain drain, how is brain drain understood across different countries in the world. The second one is some of them are more sort of government level studies where they're trying to find out how, for instance, India and Malaysia, what can the government do to attract back their expert diaspora that are living abroad. Japan also has a high percentage of scientists living in the United States. So Japanese researchers are now interested in finding out how can we get that expert community back to our country. Some of the research is actually looking at how do we quantify the loss of a talented individual leaving off. For example, in many of the African countries, it takes about 6 to 7 years for you to train a doctor, and just when they're ready and the country is ready to accept the benefits, they seem to be going abroad. One of the examples is, as per World Economic Forum, a report came out where it said that so most of the Kenyan doctors, 50% of the Kenyan doctors are actually living overseas. And if you look at the impact there, there is, according to that statistics, there is 20 Kenyan doctors for 100,000 patients. And if you contrast that with, for example, United Kingdom, there is 270 doctors for every 100,000 patients, and most of these Kenyan doctors are actually flying to UK. But one of the gaps that we saw was there was no sort of interest or no study conducted to see what was the link between brain drain and how corporations are affected, and particularly no evidence of any such research in a developing country like Nepal. So we said we want to specifically find out how is it that companies in this country are looking or preparing to cope with the dangers and implications of brain drain. And as part of that, we are conducting a qualitative research where we are asking open-ended questions to leaders across 3 sectors: tourism, banking, and education, because these are some of the most substantial industries in our country. We'll be getting to know their personal encounters, their perceptions, their attitudes, and their practices about how they actually currently adapt with the process of brain drain. and try to identify what are some of the unique strategies that could be implemented by other companies. So I think I've gone over my time slightly, so I want to conclude my presentation there. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, sessions here, presenters, and all the dignitaries and the participant and the audience here. It's me, Manoj Kumar Bhatt. I am presenting on behalf of Rupesh Shrestha sir, and we have conducted this preliminary study under the guidance of Professor Satish sir. And basically, why we have chosen this topic for this study is that during the recruitment and selection process for this conference, it is based on leadership and development, and to develop a good leader, its base is recruitment and selection in terms of organizational leadership context. And recruitment, creating a pool, and within a pool, selecting a potential candidate for the organization that can give good leadership guidelines for the organizational development. And here, why we have the major challenge of today's organization in the context of hotel or the hospitality industry is that finding a good candidate or the potential candidate that can lead the organization and make the organizational growth, mutual growth for the employee and for the employer both. And the issue of employee recruitment and selection is regarded as one of the key factors affecting the organization and organizational leadership. The major objective of the studies are to find out recruitment and selection practices in the 5-star hotels, to identify and determine the challenges and trends that the hotels are using in the selection and recruitment process, and to investigate whether the knowledge management system has been adapted in the recruitment and selection process or not. In our preliminary study, we have used descriptive and analytical research design, and purposive sampling has been used. Closed-end questionnaires and interviews were taken for verifying the data of the questionnaires so that we can triangulate. Interview with the HR managers and questionnaire were distributed, and questionnaires were designed in the Likert scale 1 to 5. Going through the results, mostly in Nepalese hotel industries, gender, according to the gender, male were dominating the hotel industries. And after interviewing with the HR managers, what we have found that due to the cultural factors, women representation in the hotel industries is lesser than the outside Nepal. And age-wise, mostly below 30s were in the respondent category, and through education level, bachelor's and high school diplomas were most of them. And income-wise, experience, mostly less than 5 years of the experience, respondent were in major. What we found out that male domination is common phenomena in the hotel industry of in the Nepalese context. Highly experienced employees are lacking in the industry, and people with less experience dominate the sector. Most of the employees, about 69.5%, are high school and bachelor's graduate. And in our study, we have used 4 variables. They are experience, attitude, knowledge, and information system. Through the literature review, what we have found out that in the before late 90s, mostly the employers go for KSA philosophy, that is knowledge, skills, and attitude. They prefer the candidate who has highest degree of education or the knowledge. Then they go for the skills that whether the candidate have or not, and then they go for the attitude of the person. But in today's context, most of the organization, or in our study in the hotel industry as well, they are going for ASK philosophy, that is attitude first philosophy. Once the candidates are hired by the employees, they highly emphasize on the attitude of the candidates, whether the attitude of the candidate is matching with the philosophy of the organization or not, or whether the candidate align with the organization goals or not, and whether the candidate can develop himself or herself in the organization where he is or she is going to be in the next few years. And what we have found out that based on the descriptive statistics and the questionnaires, experience with skills is given priority in the selection and recruitment process, and organizations see attitude of an individual as the major component of the recruitment and selection process, and technical knowledge are more preferable than non-technical knowledge. Basically in the hotel industries, the one who is from the BHM or the hotel management background, they are given more preference than non-hotel management backgrounds. One way ANOVA has been done, performed, mostly the experience and attitude. Mostly the experience coincide with the recruitment and selection process, and thereafter experience has been given priority. And based on the F values, it can be concluded that there is positive relationship between recruitment and selection practices and experience and attitude. Recruitment and selection practices varies within the hotel chains. The 5-star hotels that the hotel are based on or aligned with the different hotel chains throughout the world, they have their own system of recruitment. Nepalese 5-star hotels mostly see the attitude factor of the employees before education and experience. And in conclusion, as our objectives, hotels are still following traditional approach of recruitment and selection. Though in today's context, information technology has been developed and they are using the technology throughout the recruitment and selection process, but they are only limited to the application portal sites only. After the application are being dropped or given, they use traditional methods. No one automatic system has been still installed in the Nepalese hotel industry so far. And selection of the foreign national is done through the use of technology that is online. Mostly they are using the Skype's interviews. It is suggested that the recruitment and selection process should be automatic and governed by the knowledge management system, and use of modern approach recruitment and selection will not only reduce cost and time, but also the biasness in the selection process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, dear fellow presenters. Now, as per our working schedule, first we'll take up a few questions. If you have any questions, written down in a sheet of paper would be appreciated. If not, you can even orally speak up, and we'll try, respective members, presenters, will try their best to respond to your queries, please. Queries, please. Any queries? Yes, sir. Brown star, please. Yeah, final presenters.
Professor Satish Kumar.
Yeah.
A very interesting finding, conclusion. But what were your recommendations? Did you have any list of recommendations?
Okay.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. And for the recommendation throughout this study, we have concluded that
Is it on?
we have concluded that recruitment and selection.
You can come here. Can you speak?
Thank you for the question, Professor. Recruitment and selection process are ongoing process in the organization throughout their lifetime. And for the recommendation part, modern hotel industries, they must use the automatic system. That is, when any vacancy is opened in an organization, and if candidate wants to join, and they must be go through a process from the application to the formal selection, final selection. There must not be any bias, or the interview should also be given in such a way that there should not be any personal touch, or personal face-to-face interview, right? But there can be one problem, and that is, without seeing a candidate, what if he or she might not be as he or she is pretending, but it can be checked at the last moment throughout the sessions in the interview, from the application session and the interview. We can go through the Skypes that the most of the hotels, 5-star hotels are using for the international recruitments. They are using Skypes, but to make it more automatic, they can use the system in such a way that through the application process to the final selection, there must be bias-free recruitment policy. And for the future implication, one factor is lacking in our study, that is whether attitude determines the leadership in a candidate or the experience. And we will go further in this process. Thank you.
All right, just a follow-up question. So you have listed these recommendations in your paper, right? Yes. You did? Okay, just my humble suggestion. Just a follow-up question, quick one. What are these most of the positions I didn't see? Are they mid-level positions? Is it for what kind of the job categories? Which ones did you look at? I don't know, you might have in your paper, but we didn't see here. Which job categories?
For the interview sessions, we have interviewed with the HR managers and the leading HR and training and development managers. And for
no, those are the questions. I'm not asking you the respondents, but when they recruit from overseas, for which positions, most of which, or did you have a category? Is it management, mid-level management? Which positions were there? Did you identify those?
It's below managerial position.
Below managerial.
Below managerial position.
Okay. Just to make sure that you include all this in your paper. Okay, thank you.
Other queries, please. Yeah, please.
मलाई दुईटा कुरा सोध्न मन लाग्यो, नेपालीमै बोल्छु है।
Which paper is it all about?
एउटा चाहिँ नि यो डेभलपमेन्ट सिनारियो भन्नेमा,
Yes.
अर्को चाहिँ नि एउटा चन्द्र रिजाल।
Okay, पहिले त्यही प्रश्न लगाउँ सर।
सबै चिज यहाँ देखाउनु भयो। अहिले 3 तहको सरकारको भइसकेपछि अब यो डेभलपमेन्टको सिनारियोको रूपरेखा देखाउँदाखेरि बिहान चाहिँ नि हाम्रो के उपेन्द्र कोइराला सर पनि यहाँ प्रेजेन्ट गरेर जानुभयो, आफ्ना धारणा राखेर।
प्रश्न स्ट्रेट फरवर्ड राखिदिनु सर, हामी वी आर रनिङ सर्ट अफ टाइम।
ठिकै छ, हजुरहरूको यो एउटा के अरे आफ्नो पढाइको अर्थात् चाहिँ उसको PhD को भएको हुनाले मैले त्यसलाई उ गरिनँ।
हजुर।
तर मैले खोजेको के भन्दाखेरि जस्तो मध्यमाञ्चल विश्वविद्यालय तपाईँको त्यहाँ खडा भयो होइन, अब त्यसले गरिसकेपछि आफ्नो एरियामा के काम गर्यो त भन्ने किसिमको युनिभर्सिटीहरूले सोसल डेभलपको लागि अर्थात् चाहिँ नि ब्युरोक्राटले गरे भन्दा फरक तरिकाले, गभर्मेन्टले दिए भन्दा फरक तरिकाले आफ्ना स्टडी लिएर त्यो सोसललाई उठाउनको लागि हर किसिमका त्यो एक्टिभिटीहरूबाट के गर्यो त भन्ने किसिमको बिहान मैले सुन्न पाउँछु भन्ने आशा राखेको थिएँ, त्यहाँ पनि आएन।
हजुर
हजुरहरूले पनि एउटा स्ट्रक्चर भाइ यस्तो यस्तो गरेछ, कन्स्टिट्युसनले यो गर्यो।
मैले प्रश्न बुझिसकेँ सरको प्रश्न म यहीँ रोकेँ। हामी यहाँ मध्यपश्चिमाञ्चल विश्वविद्यालयले गरिरहेका क्रियाकलापहरू प्रचार प्रसार गर्न आएको होइन। यो प्योरली एकाडेमिक डिस्कोर्सेसहरू हामीले प्रेजेन्ट गर्दैछौँ। विश्वविद्यालय अरू विश्वविद्यालय नपुगेको ठाउँहरूमा पुगेको छ, पुग्दैछ। जस्तो हामीले कालीकोटमा अब मास्टर्स डिग्री प्रोग्राम त्यहाँ रन गर्दैछौँ। जाजरकोटमा वर्षौँदेखि मास्टर्स डिग्री नभएको ठाउँमा अघिल्लो हप्ता मात्र म आफै पुगेर त्यहाँ 2वटा विषयमा मास्टर्स डिग्रीको हामीले अप्रुभल दियौँ। अब यो हिजो आज नै सायद साथीहरूले त्यो लेटर इस्यु गर्नुभयो होला होइन। त्यसै गरी अब बर्दियामा बबई बहुमुखी क्याम्पस यति राम्रो नमुना क्याम्पस रहेछ, कम्युनिटी क्याम्पस। अब 5 वर्षभित्र मेरो एउटा कमिटमेन्ट दिएको छु, अबको 5 वर्षभित्र उहाँ अटोनोमस इन्स्टिट्युसन हुनुहुन्छ। हामी काम चाहिँ गरिरहेका छौँ सर। तर सुरुको दिनहरूमा हाम्रा दिनहरू सजिला थिएनन्, गाह्रो थियो। सुरुमा हामीले लगभग 7-8 वर्ष एकदमै नराम्रोसँग बिताएकै हो। जब उपेन्द्र कोइरालाजीको टेन्युर सुरु भएपछि डेभलपमेन्टहरू सुरु भए, प्रोजेक्टहरू म्यासिभ रूपमा त्यहाँ अहिले 60%, 75%, 90% कम्प्लिसनको स्टेजमा छन्। तर के भइदियो, नराम्रा कुराहरू हाबी भएका हुन्। तर यो जुन मिड वेस्टर्न युनिभर्सिटीको कुरा फेरि यो पेपरसँग खासै त्यसको लिन दिन छैन, त्यसलाई अहिले कनेक्ट नगरौँ।
होइन, मैले त्यसो भनेको होइन के, हाम्रा स्टुडेन्टहरूलाई
हजुर
होइन, अब तल ब्रेन्डेरेनको कुरो पनि आछ। हाम्रै देशलाई चिनाउने गरेर के गरे, हाम्रो पठन पाठनमा त्यसलाई कसरी जोडियो भन्ने किसिमको आउँछ कि भन्ने
एउटा मात्रै उदाहरण यहाँलाई दिउँ। अहिले भर्खरै अघिल्लो महिना मात्र हामीले त्यहाँको प्रोभिन्सियल गभर्मेन्टसँग पहिलो चरणको हाम्रो अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङ इस्टाब्लिस गऱ्यौँ। अब बिबिए भनेपछि एलिट्सका लागि भनिन्छ नि। अब हामी बिबिए 3वटा बिबिए जस्तो कार्यक्रमहरू पढ्न आउन नसक्नेहरूका लागि बनाउँदैछौँ र त्यो पढेर त्यहीँ गाउँमै काम गर्नेहरूका लागि बनाउँदैछौँ प्रोभिन्सियल गभर्मेन्टको सपोर्टमा। अक्षय कोषमा आधारित बिबिए कार्यक्रम, कम्युनिटीमा चाहिने एजुकेसन। त्यो एजुकेसन भनेको म्यानेजमेन्ट मात्रै पढाउँदैनौँ हामी, त्यो बिबिएमा एग्रिकल्चर पनि पढाउँछौँ, बिजनेस पनि पढाउँछौँ, ल पनि पढाउँछौँ, अनि बेसिक हाउसहोल्ड इलेक्ट्रिफिकेसन, इन्जिनियरिङ त्यो कुराहरू पनि राख्छौँ। किन कम्युनिटीले त्यो माग्यो, गर्न लागेको हामीहरू त्यसरी गरिरहेका छौँ।
धन्यवाद सर। अब मैले यो
दोस्रो प्रश्नमा जाउँ सर। दोस्रो प्रश्न
अरुण पौडेल सरको यो ब्रेन ड्रेनको कुरो त सबै आयो। यसको कज के हो होइन? यो कजलाई रोक्नको लागि अब हाम्रा इन्स्टिट्युसनहरूले गर्नुपर्ने के हो त? किन यस्तो भइरहेको छ, यसको मात्रै उत्तर खोजेँ।
ओके अरुणजी, प्लिज। डु यु निड अ माइक or you can move here? Arunji, you can limit to 2-3 causes. हुन्छ हुन्छ। Yeah.
सर कजेसमा चाहिँ हामीले जुन एनेबलर्स भनेर भनेका थियौँ, ग्लोबलाइजेसनदेखि लिएर क्वालिटी ओरिएन्टेड माइग्रेसन प्रोग्राम जस्तो युकेमा, अस्ट्रेलियामा, क्यानाडामा, युएसमा, पर्टिकुलरली युएसमा स्टेम भनेको चाहिँ साइन्स, टेक्नोलोजी, इन्जिनियरिङ र म्यानेजमेन्टमा चाहिँ तपाईँको राम्रो दखल भएको मान्छेलाई उनीहरूले डेस्परेटली खोजिरहेका छन्। यहाँसम्म कि अब संस्कृत भाषामा चाहिँ तपाईँको एकदम दखल छ भने दे आर स्टिल लुकिङ फर। सो मेन एनेबलर्सहरू चाहिँ तिनीहरू हुन्, मेजर फ्याक्टर्स। तर लिट्रेचरमा अरू साइड गरिएको, फर इक्जाम्पल फ्यामिली टाइज, कतिको केसमा जस्तो एउटा स्टडीमा चाहिँ युएस र युकेमा गएर म्यानेजमेन्ट स्टडी पढ्ने विद्यार्थीहरूले किन चाहिँ त्यहाँ जान्छन् र कति किन फर्किँदैनन् भन्ने कुरामा फ्यामिली प्रेसरको धेरै कुरा गरिएको छ, फ्यामिली टाइजको कुरा गरिएको छ। कति केसमा रिसर्चर्सहरू जस्तो जापान र इन्डियाको रिसर्चर्सहरू जाने बेला म त्यहाँ जान्छु, मेरो डक्टरेट भ्याउँछु, मेरो टेन्युर भ्याउँछु, फर्केर आउँछु भनेर जाने मोस्ट केसेस, तर फर्केर नआउने केसेस देखियो। किन गर्छन् भन्दाखेरि आखिर दे हेभ अ बेटर लाइफस्टाइल देयर होइन। र रेमिटेन्सको कुरा पनि अब हामीले चाहिँ अहिले नेपालमा रेमिटेन्स आउँछ भनेको,
प्लिज मेक इट सर्ट।
लङ टर्म सेटलमेन्ट इन्टेन्सन जसको उतै छ नि, उनीहरूले बिस्तारै रेमिटेन्स पनि कम पठाउन थाले, किनकि उनीहरूको परिवारलाई नै उतै लाने उद्देश्य भएपछि त्यस्तो कजहरू देखियो है। अब छोटकरी भन्दा
and there is another equally important, another very important cause, a social stigma, you know. My brother's child goes abroad and my family will be under pressure by the society. In Nepali we say यसको बच्चा त्यति पनि गर्न सकिन्छ, काकाको गइसक्यो, दाइको गइसक्यो, भाइको गइसक्यो, आफ्नो छोराछोरी सबै यहीँ पढाछ, कमजोर रहेछन्. There is evolving stigma. That also could be one of the causes. But needs
Quite
testing.
related to peer pressure as well.
Yeah, needs testing. Okay.
सर हाम्रो स्टडी चाहिँ प्योरली के हो भने जस्तो ब्याङ्कहरूले ब्याङ्किङ सेक्टरमा जस्तो ग्लोबलको एजुकेसन जस्तो सेक्टरमा अब विद्यार्थीहरू पोटेन्सियल भएका मान्छेहरू ट्यालेन्टहरू भएका विदेश गएपछि त हाम्रो देशमा 5 वर्षपछि हाम्रो भिजन के हो, हामीले गर्न सक्छौँ कि सक्दैनौँ भन्ने क्वेसन आयो होइन. त्यसमा हामीले के गर्न खोज्यौँ भने सकेसम्म धेरै लिडर्सहरूलाई छाँदेर यो 3टा इन्डस्ट्रीमा ब्याङ्किङ, एजुकेसन र टुरिज्ममा उहाँहरूले अहिले के गर्नुभएको छ, भोलिपछि के गर्न चाहनुहुन्छ चाहिँ हामीले ओपन एन्डेड क्वेसन, ओपन एन्डेड इन्टरभ्यू गरेर बुझ्न खोजेका हौँ. र फाइनली चाहिँ के हुन्छ एनालिसिसबाट यो चाहिँ यिनीहरूले गरेका रहेछन् जसमध्ये यति 3टा इफेक्टिभ भयो भन्ने खालको हाम्रो स्ट्रक्चर हुन्छ. अहिले रिसर्च कम्प्लिट भएको छैन अनफर्चुनेटली, त्यही भएर अहिले भर्खर कन्क्लुजन चाहिँ दिन सकिएन सर.
Okay. Any more queries? This will be the last query.
My question goes to Mr. Balram Chapagai. Your issue is, does corporate social responsibility pay off? So my query is, does your, the research covers the banking and finance sector in context of Nepal? Does in banking and finance sector, corporate social responsibility contributes to the financial performance? That question, Mr. Balram Chapagai. And next question I would like to ask Mr. Manoj Bhatta, that you have indicated that recruitment and selection practices in case of 5-star hotels of Nepal. But which 5-star hotels you have done research? Please, if you would like to indicate that, it would be far better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. This study was conducted in the context of listed companies of Nepal, which covers all industry sectors listed in NEPSE, including commercial banks, development banks, finance companies, hydropower, insurance, trading, others, etc. Therefore, it is not only for BFIs, but also it includes other industries in the study framework. This is the answer to your first question. Second, regarding the second part of your question, does it pay off? Yes, obviously this research finding shows that it pays off. However, it needs to be kept in mind that if you are doing CSR, doing something in the G sub CSR, we may not truly regard it as CSR. For example, sometimes जस्तो पशुपतिमा गएर बाँदरलाई केरा बाँड्यो भने अर्को नेक्स्ट क्वार्टरमा हाम्रो चाहिँ फाइनेन्शियल पर्फर्मेन्समा इम्प्रुभ भएको देखिन्छ कि देखिन्न भनेर क्वेसन सोध्यो भने मेबी नट. तर के भने स्टेक होल्डर रिलेटेड एस्पेक्ट्स अफ CSR मेरोमा त्यो मेजर्स अफ CSRमा त्यसमा चाहिँ CSR टुवर्ड्स इम्प्लोइज, टुवर्ड्स कस्टमर्स, टुवर्ड्स investors, towards community, towards environment, vis-a-vis corporate governance. If they are really responsible, their way of doing business is really responsible, it is not only morally right thing to do, it also pays off. My study shows that.
Okay. Manoj.
Thank you, sir, for your question. But in this study, due to ethical issues, I cannot reveal the name of the hotel industry, particular hotel, but I have studied, we have studied about the 5-star hotels in the Kathmandu, based in Kathmandu. But I cannot reveal the name of the hotel.
Thank you, Manoj.
In the paper that there are so many issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for marvelous questions. Now let me take a few more minutes to bring these all things into our academic discourses. The first presentation after me, Dr. Puri, D.L. Puri. He presented a paper on good governance. Yes, of course, the values, norms, principles of cooperatives, and good governance and its pillars. The elements he used in his study would be a good quest of learning for university graduates. So this subject matter can be readily accepted as a discourse for higher education institutions. It is a really good paper for university level academic discourses. So we take it as our property through this conference. Paper was well crafted. Information, it was precisely analyzed using inferential analysis, which is needed to use it as a case in our BBA and MBA classrooms, more specifically. Moving to another presentation by Dr. Chapangai on CSR, does it pay off? Of course, he said, the research evidence confirms it pays off. So, however, his initial literature reviews revealed there was no unidirectional response on it. His work confirmed in context of Nepal that effectively managed, effectively balanced contribution and CSR using universally defined model, maybe, pillars, page off. So again, let's accept it as another quest of continued classroom discussions. How about that? Giving big claps, both the researchers. And another important aspect of this research, sample size, I really appreciate. Many people today are taking samples in an ad hoc basis. Let's try to use universal formula for deducting samples for respective type of study. From that respect too, this paper is equally acceptable as a discourse for our regular classroom initiatives. Moving to Bharat Singh Thapa. He worked on paradigm shifts in microfinance system. Yes, however, we are infant in institutionalizing microfinancing in the country. It is, again, equally important subject matter for our academia. And the shifts he has identified from traditionally not for profit oriented approach to profit making instrument for social well-being. Microfinancing could be accepted, and it has proved as an instrument for developing world. Similarly, in respect with impact evaluation, earlier we used to apply traditional approach, as he said. Now there is radical changes in assessing impact of microfinancing, and of course it is directly connected with welfare economy. So this subject also should be, or this issue also should be an agenda for continued research and innovation, as well as discourses in higher education academia. Give him big hands, please. Moving back to Paneruji and Paudelji, though this paper is in process, the early progress reveals they are in right track. Topic is fairly acceptable for both industry and academia. And one aspect, let me reveal, they should have made a bit visible PowerPoint presentation. That was aspect that they could have improved. Otherwise, there is nothing wrong. We can come up with only a concept, only a framework, conceptual framework, and make a discourse. That is the beauty of conferences. And going back to three authors, Professor Oja, Mr. Shrestha, and Mr. Bhatta, recruitment and selection practices. We most of the times in higher education institutions, what happens is we rush for high flyer issues, sometimes very ordinary but important. General issues remain undermined. So considering such issues also should be made a part of our continued discourses in higher education. And one thing takeaway could be traditional KSA from Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge, skill, competence to attitude. Shift from KSA to ASK. First attitude, then skill, then knowledge. Precisely, the hospitality industry is seeking for people with attitude, full of attitude. Then after skill and knowledge will be required, but may not be dominantly required like in other sectors. So shift from KSA to ASK could be a paradigm shift in university discourses, taking away from paradigm shift of Bloom's taxonomy. So I would like to thank all the presenters. It was marvelous hearing you, marvelous receiving your queries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, session chair. We finished the parallel session as well. After this, we have the cultural program taking